Picture a stellar catastrophe so vast it effortlessly outshines an entire galaxy, born from a single silent failure in the absolute dark. High above your resting body, colossal cosmic titans are silently forging the very iron that currently courses through your veins. These ancient furnaces burn brightly for millions of eons, completely unaware of the invisible weight steadily building inside their hidden hearts. Imagine a lone, defiant survivor emerging from this ultimate gravitational defeat, a sphere so impossibly dense that a single teaspoon of its matter weighs 1 billion tons. This bizarre remnant spins frantically in the centre of the wreckage, a tiny victor holding more mass than our sun within the footprint of a small city. Surprisingly, this dead heart refuses to stay quiet, singing a rhythmic magnetic lullaby of radiation that sweeps across the void for billions of years. If we were to look closer at the sprawling aftermath, we would see the roaring debris slowly transforming into a serene, glowing tapestry of recycled stardust. This cosmic structure expands and thins over the millennia, stretching so far it eventually becomes a translucent ghost, wandering the silent interstellar medium. The sheer ferocity of the explosion ultimately fades into an absolute lightless peace, patiently seeding the empty dark with the quiet promise of new, fertile worlds. You are safe. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep. As your muscles soften and your waking thoughts dissolve into the shadows, the grand, destructive cycles of the universe become a soothing, hypnotic lullaby. Your mind is perfectly ready to travel across the infinite silent gulfs of space, tracing the magnificent, terrifying path of a doomed giant. Deep within the bloated, glowing atmosphere of a red supergiant, a silent and insidious accumulation of iron marks the true beginning of the end. Deep within the bloated, glowing atmosphere of a red supergiant, a silent and insidious accumulation of iron marks the true beginning of the end. For eons, this colossal stellar titan has burned through lighter elements, transmuting hydrogen into helium, carbon and silicon in a desperate bid to stave off its own demise. The majestic exterior betrays nothing of the internal crisis, continuing to shine with a ruddy, tranquil brilliance against the cold backdrop of interstellar space. However, deep in the absolute centre, the nuclear forge has finally met an insurmountable barrier. Iron, unlike every element that came before it, refuses to yield energy when fused, acting instead as an energetic sponge that drains the star's vitality. This heavy, inert ash settles into a perfectly spherical core, growing denser and more massive with every passing millennium. This dense metallic core bears the crushing, unimaginable weight of the entire star pressing inward with merciless intent. Above this silent centre lie millions of miles of swirling plasma, an ocean of incandescent gas that constitutes a mass many times greater than our own sun. Every single atom of that vast envelope is being relentlessly pulled toward the exact centre by the inescapable grip of gravity. A profound tension builds within this silent, dark heart, pitting the fundamental forces of quantum mechanics against the infinite crush of the universe. The iron atoms hold their ground for now, vibrating violently in the encroaching dark as they shoulder the weight of an entire solar system. It is a precarious, terrifying balance that cannot possibly last forever. Surprisingly, the universe allows this monumental internal tragedy to unfold while the star remains blissfully bright on the outside. To any hypothetical observer situated on a distant orbiting planet, the red supergiant appears exactly as it has for millions of generations. Its crimson light continues to bathe nearby worlds in a steady, warming glow that suggests eternal stability and unwavering cosmic power. The vast distance between the collapsing core and the outer atmosphere acts as a perfect insulating veil of absolute ignorance. It takes tens of thousands of years for the energy generated in the depths to slowly migrate to the visible surface and radiate away into the void. Therefore, the photons currently leaving the star's photosphere are ancient relics, carrying a message of health from a time long before the iron sickness took hold. This brilliant facade is the ultimate astronomical illusion, a magnificent lie painted across the canvas of the night sky. The star is already functionally dead at its core, sustained only by the delayed fading echoes of its past glories. The radiant beauty of the supergiant masks a silent terminal rot that is rapidly approaching the absolute breaking point. Looking back, for millions of years, nuclear fusion provided a gentle, life-sustaining outward pressure against the relentless inward pull of gravity. This delicate equilibrium, known as hydrostatic equilibrium, is the defining physical principle that allows a star to exist as a stable, shining sphere. Deep inside the stellar furnace, the violent smashing together of atomic nuclei released torrents of high-energy photons that pushed outward against the crushing mass. This constant, fierce outpouring of radiation functioned as an invisible architectural support holding up the colossal weight of the star's outer layers. It was a beautiful, chaotic dance of physics, where the fire of creation exactly matched the crushing force of destruction. Throughout its long, luminous life, the star maintained this perfect balance, effortlessly managing to hold the crushing darkness at bay. Yet, this magnificent, enduring harmony was always fundamentally dependent on a finite, steadily dwindling supply of fusible material. The gravity of the star, however, is eternal and never weakens, waiting patiently for the moment the inner fires begin to stutter and fade. That long period of graceful equilibrium is now nothing more than a fading memory in the life cycle of this doomed giant. Now the ancient fuel is completely spent, and a heavy, terrifying silence descends on the once-roaring nuclear furnace. The core has exhausted its final reserves of silicon, leaving nothing but the dead, inert iron that refuses to burn or release any sustaining warmth. Without the fierce generation of new energy, the outward pressure that supported the star for eons suddenly vanishes into the cold ether. A sudden, chilling quiet replaces the chaotic roar of atomic collisions that define the star's vibrant youth and prosperous middle age. The cessation of fusion is not a gradual, gentle winding down, but rather a sudden, catastrophic shut-off of the stellar engine. It is as if the beating heart of a giant has simply stopped in its chest, plunging the internal cavity into a deep, motionless freeze. The surrounding layers of unburnt gas remain suspended for a fleeting moment, completely unaware that their foundational support has permanently evaporated. The great forge that birthed the very elements necessary for life is now closed, cold, and entirely devoid of power. This profound stillness marks the precise threshold where the star ceases to be a creator and begins its rapid descent into pure, unbridled destruction. In the gathering dark of the core, ghostly neutrinos begin to quietly stream away, carrying precious, irreplaceable energy directly into the cold void. These nearly massless, elusive particles are born in the extreme, agonizing temperatures of the dying heart, but they interact so weakly with normal matter that they completely ignore the star's immense bulk. They easily pass through millions of miles of dense plasma without a single collision, escaping the stellar interior at the absolute speed of light. This silent mass exodus operates as a fatal cosmic leak, draining the central core of whatever lingering heat and support it still possesses. As the neutrinos flee into the depths of interstellar space, they effectively steal the thermal energy that was desperately trying to hold the crushing weight of gravity at bay. The more the core compresses, the more rapidly these spectral messengers are generated, accelerating the cooling process in a vicious, inescapable cycle. Unlike the brilliant photons that take millennia to reach the surface, this invisible flood of particles abandons the doomed star instantaneously. Their quiet departure seals the fate of the core, ensuring that no internal heat can possibly halt the impending collapse. The star is being bled dry of its vital energy by a silent, invisible tide that leaves no trace of its passing. unseen by any telescope and hidden from the wider universe, the central temperature violently spikes to billions of degrees. As gravity ruthlessly squeezes the iron sphere, the intense compression forces the trapped matter to heat up to levels that defy human imagination. This isn't the gentle warmth of a burning fire, but an apocalyptic, blistering inferno that threatens to tear the very fabric of atomic nuclei apart. The heat is so incredibly intense that the high-energy photons bouncing around the core become destructive, shattering the very iron atoms the star spent millennia carefully forging. In a process known as photodisintegration, these energetic rays smash the heavy iron nuclei back into lighter helium and free protons. This sudden reversal of fusion is an endothermic reaction, meaning it aggressively consumes heat from its surroundings rather than releasing it. Instead of providing a burst of supportive outward pressure, this catastrophic temperature spike actually worsens the star's desperate, impossible predicament. The unmaking of the iron core robs the center of its remaining thermal support, pulling the rug out from under the millions of miles of stellar material pressing down. The core is literally melting itself down in a final agonizing fever dream before the ultimate inevitable structural failure. As the spatial limits of matter are pushed to the brink, electrons are violently squeezed into protons, creating an incredibly dense sea of pure neutrons. In a normal atom, electrons buzz happily in vast empty orbits around the nucleus, creating the solid volume of everyday materials. However, the merciless crush of the dying star's gravity leaves no room for such spacious, luxurious atomic architectures. The intense pressure forces these tiny, negatively charged particles to crash directly into the positively charged protons residing in the nucleus. When they collide, they annihilate each other's electrical charges, instantly transmuting into neutral particles and releasing another massive, debilitating wave of escaping neutrinos. The intricate, organized structure of the iron atoms completely collapses into a homogeneous, unrecognizable nuclear paste. What was once an Earth-sized sphere of glowing iron is aggressively crushed down into a bizarre, frictionless fluid of neutrons packed shoulder to shoulder. The core has been fundamentally transformed from normal stellar matter into a strange quantum state that resembles a single, gigantic atomic nucleus. This profound metamorphosis represents matter's absolute final defense mechanism against the infinite, crushing power of gravity. If we were to look closer at this final desperate stand, time seems to stretch as the core reaches the absolute limit of physical compression. The neutrons, now packed as tightly as the laws of quantum mechanics will theoretically allow, begin to push back with a force known as degeneracy pressure. This is not a force generated by heat or fusion, but by the fundamental impossibility of two identical particles occupying the exact same space. For a fleeting, agonizing moment, the collapsing heart of the star hits an impenetrable wall of nuclear density and abruptly halts its inward plunge. The density required to create this sudden stop is truly staggering. A sphere the mass of our entire sun has been compacted into a ball barely 20 miles across. This unimaginably dense, ultra-rigid object is locked in a momentary, perfectly still stalemate with the gravitational weight of the surrounding universe. A quiet fraction of a second is absolutely all that remains before the ultimate explosive collapse finally begins. In the human realm, a millisecond is entirely imperceptible, a fleeting tick of the clock that passes completely unnoticed in the span of an ordinary day. Here, in the dying heart of a supergiant, that same microscopic sliver of time encompasses the entire terrifying transition from life to profound, inescapable death. This brief, breathless silence is the true calm before the most destructive storm the universe has to offer. The ancient star hangs suspended on the very precipice of total annihilation, completely quiet, entirely doomed, and beautiful to the very last. When this fleeting fraction of a second finally expires, the resulting catastrophe will permanently alter the fabric of the galaxy. That fleeting fraction of a second finally expires, and the resulting catastrophe shatters the fragile piece of the stellar interior. Gravity, the patient and tireless architect of the cosmos, definitively wins its eternal, millions of years-long war against the outward push of stellar fire. With nothing left to hold the massive celestial body up, an utterly catastrophic implosion begins to unfold in the absolute dark. The invisible, relentless force of gravity pulls inward with an intensity that violently distorts the surrounding space. Vast layers of the star, previously suspended in perfect equilibrium, suddenly find themselves with no foundation whatsoever. The structural failure is immediate, absolute, and merciless, affecting every single particle in the colossal spherical structure. Plunging into the newly formed vacuum, the outer layers of the star accelerate to truly incomprehensible velocities. Drawn by the sheer, unadulterated mass of the dense core, these oceans of plasma plummet inward at a significant fraction of the speed of light. Matter is forced to move so fast that it begins to blur the rigid, predictable boundaries of classical physics. If one could witness this inward rush, it would look less like falling gas and more like a furious, blinding smear of kinetic energy. The sheer speed of the collapse compresses the falling material, violently heating it through extreme friction and unimaginable pressure. The previously distinct layers of the star's atmosphere are violently mixed and churned as they race toward their absolute doom. This breathtaking acceleration generates a terrifying, unstoppable momentum within the collapsing stellar envelope. Billions of trillions of tons of superheated plasma are hurtling toward a microscopic central point, carrying enough kinetic energy to completely obliterate a planetary system. The star is effectively attempting to crush itself out of existence, driven by a suicidal, inescapable gravitational imperative. Try to visualize the sheer, mind-bending scale of this inward plunge to truly grasp the horror of the stellar collapse. Imagine the mass of millions of Earths, an amount of rock and iron so vast it exceeds human comprehension, all collapsing simultaneously into a sphere barely the size of a small terrestrial city. This is the extreme geometric nightmare occurring at the center of the imploding red supergiant. The spatial coordinates of the star are being violently rewritten as an astronomical volume is aggressively reduced to an infinitesimal point. Gas that once spanned distances far greater than the orbit of Jupiter is violently crammed into a microscopic, suffocating volume. The claustrophobic reality of this collapse is absolute, leaving no empty space, no void, and no escape for the plummeting matter. As you rest quietly, breathing slowly in the safety of your surroundings, feel the calm, expansive stillness of your own space. In stark contrast, the dying star offers no peace, only a violent, inescapable compression of physical reality itself. It is a terrifying reduction of cosmic majesty into an impossibly tight, hyperdense prison of crushed atoms. Hurtling downward at relativistic speeds, this apocalyptic rain of plasma finally reaches the very bottom of the steep gravitational well. Here, the falling gas abruptly encounters the ultra-dense, completely immovable sphere of neutrons forged just moments before in the dying core. This newly formed object is the hardest, most unyielding surface that exists anywhere in the vast observable universe. The impact is so unimaginably violent that it aggressively halts the catastrophic inward plunge in less than a millisecond. All of that staggering, universe-shaking kinetic energy has to go somewhere, as it can no longer continue its journey inward toward the center. The immovable object has definitively stopped the unstoppable force, forcing a violent, immediate redirection of apocalyptic energy. Rebounding violently off this impenetrable, hyperdense sphere, the falling matter undergoes a sudden, aggressive reversal of immense proportions. This massive cosmic bounce gives birth to a terrifying, outward-bound shockwave deep inside the buried, suffocating heart of the star. It is a ripple of pure, unadulterated destruction, born from the most violent collision physically possible in the natural world. This newly minted shockwave is a wall of immense pressure and blistering heat, travelling much faster than the speed of sound within the dense stellar plasma. It acts as an aggressive physical plough, tearing through the infalling gas with ruthless mechanical efficiency and unstoppable force. The wave carries the combined, redirected kinetic energy of the entire collapsed stellar envelope, aiming it squarely at the heavens. For the first time since the core catastrophically failed, energy is finally moving decisively outward, fighting back against the encroaching dark. The birth of this shockwave marks the exact pivotal moment when the silent implosion transforms into a roaring, violent awakening. However, this newborn titan of energy must now fight its way out of the deepest, most punishing gravitational trap ever conceived. Pushing valiantly outward, the explosive wave immediately encounters a staggering, almost insurmountable obstacle blocking its path to freedom. It must violently plough through the relentless, crushing weight of the star's outer layers, which are still aggressively raining down at relativistic speeds. This creates a terrifying head-on collision between the explosive outward force and the apocalyptic inward plunge of the stellar atmosphere. The sheer, overwhelming density of the infalling matter acts like a thick, suffocating blanket, rapidly sapping the shockwave's intense forward momentum. Slowly, agonizingly, the brilliant ring of expanding pressure begins to lose its initial, explosive ferocity as it battles the incoming tide. It struggles against the immense gravitational pull, fighting for every single inch of ground within the chaotic, crushing darkness of the stellar interior. Allow your muscles to completely relax, sinking heavily into your comfortable resting place, completely free of such unimaginable, tearing cosmic tension. Within the dying star, the tension is absolute, as the stalled shockwave hovers precariously, unable to break free of the suffocating downpour of gas. Without a sudden, miraculous infusion of fresh energy, the explosion is doomed to fail, destined to be crushed back down onto the dense neutron sphere. Deep behind the struggling shock front, a strange and miraculous quantum rescue operation begins to unfold in the superheated dark. The hyperdense environment is now so obscenely compressed that even ghostly neutrinos, which normally pass through solid matter effortlessly, become temporarily trapped. These elusive particles, numbering in the trillions of trillions, are bottlenecked by the extreme density of the collapsed, tightly packed core. Unable to freely escape into the cold void, this massive swarm of trapped neutrinos begins to violently boil and churn in the confined microscopic space. They swirl and collide frantically within the tiny gap between the solid neutron sphere and the stalled, suffocating shockwave above. This confined, chaotic motion acts like a cosmic pressure cooker, rapidly building up an unimaginable, desperate reserve of extreme thermal energy. The temperature behind the stalled wave skyrockets to levels that make the core's initial, terrifying heat seem like a gentle, pleasant warmth. This boiling soup of trapped ghost particles becomes a desperate, roiling engine of pure, unadulterated thermodynamic power, pushing against the dark. They are frantically seeking a release valve, pushing against the back of the stalled shockwave with an increasingly violent, frantic desperation. This intense, unprecedented neutrino heating provides the exact miracle required to save the dying, suffocating explosion from total failure. As the trapped particles smash into the back of the stalled shock front, they aggressively transfer their immense thermal energy to the surrounding dense gas. This delicate process acts like a sudden, massive injection of highly volatile rocket fuel into a sputtering, failing, overwhelmed engine. The sheer volume of heat absorbed from the boiling neutrinos breathes ferocious, unstoppable new life into the suffocating, trapped wave. Re-energized and blistering with newly acquired quantum power, the shock front finally breaks the devastating, crushing stalemate with the infalling matter. The immense pressure behind the wave perfectly overcomes the crushing weight above, resuming its violent outward journey with renewed, terrifying vengeance. It is a beautiful, paradoxical twist of fate that the very elusive particles responsible for draining the core's heat now provide the energy to tear the star apart. This miraculous neutrino-driven resurrection is the critical, defining mechanism that guarantees the stellar envelope will be completely and utterly obliterated. The once stalled wave is now an unstoppable, superheated juggernaut, completely immune to the desperate, grasping, frantic pull of gravity. Driven by this extreme, bottom-up heating, the interior of the star violently erupts into a furious, turbulent frenzy of unimaginable scale. Massive convective bubbles of superheated plasma rapidly rise behind the advancing shockwave, while cooler, incredibly dense pockets violently sink toward the core. This aggressive, churning, boiling motion violently stirs the stellar interior into a chaotic, apocalyptic froth of completely destabilized matter. These titanic plumes of boiling gas act like the churning currents of a stormy, enraged ocean, vastly amplifying the destructive power of the cosmic explosion. They furiously mix the star's carefully segregated layers of elements, violently dragging heavy, newly forged metals up from the deep, hidden depths. The pristine, orderly, layered structure of the ancient star is completely shredded by these furious, rising bubbles of immense thermal energy. Notice the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall of your own chest, a peaceful, steady contrast to the chaotic, destructive churning tearing the giant star apart. This violent convection ensures that the explosion is not a neat, perfect, symmetrical sphere, but a jagged, turbulent, terrifyingly chaotic monster. The furious mixing guarantees that when the star finally bursts, its incredibly enriched guts will be violently scattered in every possible chaotic direction. Propelled by the resurrected shockwave and the furious churning convection, the ultimate fate of the star is permanently and beautifully sealed. In a dramatic, awe-inspiring reversal of astronomical fortune, the catastrophic implosion completely transforms into a ferocious, unstoppable, outward-bound explosion. The immense crushing weight of the star's massive outer layers is finally, definitively overpowered by the sheer, unadulterated violence of the rebounding, boiling core. The unstoppable wave of immense pressure and blistering heat accelerates outward, violently ripping the star's immense envelope to absolute shreds. Every single layer of gas, from the deep oxygen shell to the vast, sprawling hydrogen atmosphere, is aggressively expelled outward at staggering relativistic speeds. The invisible gravitational chains that held the star together for millions of years are effortlessly shattered by the raw kinetic fury of the newborn blast. The silent, agonizing plunge into absolute darkness has been completely replaced by the most energetic, terrifyingly luminous event in the known cosmos. What began as a quiet, unseen tragedy deep in the isolated iron heart has evolved into a roaring, triumphant display of absolute cosmic destruction. The star is no longer collapsing silently into the void. It is violently, beautifully and fiercely exploding into the waiting empty galaxy. Exploding into the waiting empty galaxy, the turbulent internal nightmare finally reaches the very edge of the stellar envelope. The resurrected shockwave, having violently clawed its way through millions of miles of suffocating plasma, at last approaches the transparent outer atmosphere. Here, the density of the massive star drops precipitously, offering no further resistance to the ascending titan of immense pressure and blistering heat. Breaking through this final gossamer veil of primordial hydrogen, the pent-up fury of the imploded core is suddenly irrevocably uncaged. The surface of the giant star, which had remained deceivingly placid throughout the internal catastrophe, violently shatters like a fragile, impossibly large glass shell. An unstoppable tsunami of superheated matter erupts outward, tearing the delicate photosphere into completely unrecognizable, churning shreds of glowing debris. This majestic breach marks the irreversible transition from a hidden, subterranean physics anomaly to a purely public, overwhelmingly visible cosmic spectacle. The invisible gravitational prison is entirely annihilated, allowing the trapped internal energy to spill freely into the infinite waiting expanse. A truly staggering amount of raw, unadulterated power is instantly liberated from its claustrophobic spherical confinement. Suddenly unshackled, a brilliant, terrifying flash of intense ultraviolet and X-ray radiation pierces the surrounding interstellar dark. This initial burst of intense energy is not entirely visible to the limited human eye, but it is immensely powerful and fundamentally destructive. It races far ahead of the expanding physical debris at the absolute speed of light, acting as an invisible herald of the impending cosmic apocalypse. The sheer intensity of this high-frequency radiation instantly vaporizes any stray comets or unfortunate planetary bodies orbiting too closely to the doomed Titan. It ruthlessly strips electrons from neighboring gas clouds, transforming tranquil pockets of the surrounding galaxy into violently ionized, glowing auroras. This blinding, invisible shock front carries the immediate scorching signature of a temperature exceeding millions of degrees. Notice the soft, comforting darkness behind your gently closed eyelids, a deep, quiet sanctuary from such blinding, merciless cosmic glares. In the immediate vicinity of the shattered star, no such shadows or sanctuaries can possibly exist. The quiet void is aggressively flooded with a torrent of searing, sterilizing radiation that fundamentally alters the local galactic environment forever. As the aggressively expanding fireball rapidly swells and cools just enough to emit visible wavelengths, a truly incomprehensible radiance is violently born. For a brief, glorious moment, the dying star effortlessly outshines the combined light of every other luminous body in its entire host galaxy. A single, solitary point of exploding gas manages to completely rival the optical output of hundreds of billions of stable, silently burning suns. This staggering optical dominance paints a temporary blinding beacon across the sprawling, spiraling arms of the celestial cosmic neighborhood. If a galaxy were a massive, glittering metropolis, this singular explosion would be equivalent to a colossal, blinding flare suddenly detonated in the city square. The surrounding stellar neighbours are completely washed out and rendered entirely invisible by the overwhelming, aggressive brilliance of this dying giant. Astronomers often refer to this phenomenal peak luminosity as a fleeting testament to the sheer scale of the energy released during the collapse. The projected light is so extraordinarily intense that it can easily cast crisp, stark shadows on planetary surfaces located dozens of light-years away. It is a triumphant, arrogant display of sheer optical power, a magnificent, roaring final bow before the eternal curtain drops. Racing outward into the infinite chill of the cosmic void, the aggressively expanding gases begin to undergo a profound thermodynamic shift. Without the confining pressure of the star's immense gravity to maintain their blistering heat, the violently expelled layers cool remarkably rapidly. The internal temperature plummets from millions of degrees down to a mere few thousand in a staggeringly short period of astronomical time. This rapid cooling causes the blindingly white-hot fireball to gracefully shift its brilliant colour spectrum, adopting deeper, richer hues of red and glowing orange. As the expelled plasma massively expands, it becomes increasingly transparent, allowing the deeper, slower-moving layers of the shattered core to finally become visible. The explosion transforms from a solid, opaque wall of pure light into a complex, glowing, three-dimensional tapestry of rushing, cooling gas. Allow your exhaling breath to release any lingering heat or tension from your body, mirroring the sudden, expansive cooling of the shattered star. The furious kinetic energy absolutely remains, pushing the debris outward at thousands of miles per second, but the thermal intensity swiftly wanes. This crucial drop in overall temperature sets the stage for a miraculous microscopic process that will permanently enrich the surrounding universe. Deep within the violently expanding turbulent shell of the explosion, a fleeting crucible of unimaginable heat and crushing pressure is momentarily sustained. During the exact fraction of a second when the shockwave initially ripped through the star's layers, it sparked a wildly chaotic frenzy of rapid nuclear fusion. This incredibly brief window of extreme quantum conditions achieved what millions of years of stable stellar burning had completely failed to do. Stray neutrons, aggressively unleashed in the chaotic destruction of the central core, are slammed into the nuclei of lighter, pre-existing atoms. This rapid atomic capture occurs significantly faster than the unstable elements can decay, creating highly bloated, bizarre atomic structures that defy standard chemical logic. As the expanding fireball eventually cools, these exotic isotopes quickly stabilize into a completely new, vastly heavier array of permanent chemical elements. This explosive nucleosynthesis is a fiercely aggressive, beautifully chaotic act of cosmic alchemy, spontaneously generating materials that simply cannot exist otherwise. The destructive shockwave paradoxically acts as the ultimate creator, forcing matter into entirely novel configurations through sheer, unadulterated brute force. The dying star bravely spends its final explosive breath meticulously forging the very building blocks of physical complexity. Among the exotic treasures successfully forged in this apocalyptic crucible are the heavy, lustrous metals that humanity so deeply and fiercely covets. Vast, unimaginable quantities of gold, platinum, and heavy uranium are rapidly synthesized and immediately scattered outward in a fast-moving, glittering interstellar mist. The sheer, staggering volume of these precious materials produced in a single explosion vastly exceeds the mass of our entire local solar system. These newly minted, glittering atoms ride the cooling shockwave like microscopic surfers, hurtling headlong into the vast, waiting emptiness of the galaxy. They are no longer trapped in the oppressive, crushing depths of a gravitational well, but are entirely free to drift, scatter, and freely mingle. The expanding fireball acts as a colossal, incredibly generous cosmic sour, violently flinging its precious metallic seeds far and wide into the dark. Feel the heavy, solid pull of gravity anchoring you securely to your comfortable resting place, a gentle reminder of the mass that surrounds you. That very mass, including the dense, precious metals safely hidden deep within our Earth, was violently expelled from a similar stellar death cry long ago. The universe is being continuously, silently enriched by this incredibly violent, glittering, beautiful rain of heavy atomic ash. Without the extreme aggressive violence of this specific type of cosmic flash, the universe would remain a profoundly dull and chemically simple place. The gentle, stable burning of ordinary stars only manages to produce light gases and perhaps a meagre smattering of basic carbon or oxygen. To create the rigid, complex chemistry strictly required to build massive terrestrial worlds, the universe unequivocally demands the catastrophic sacrifice of a giant. A galaxy entirely lacking these rare explosive events would be populated exclusively by bloated gas giants and sterile, freezing spheres of loose ice. There would be absolutely no dense iron cores to generate protective magnetic fields, no heavy silicon to form vast rocky crusts, and no dynamic planetary tectonics. The very concept of a solid, beautifully varied physical landscape is entirely dependent on the scattered, recycled debris of these obliterated stellar titans. Therefore, the spectacular destruction of the red supergiant is not an astronomical tragedy, but a fundamentally necessary act of grand cosmic engineering. It is the only natural mechanism capable of aggressively polluting the pristine ancient hydrogen clouds with the rigid, heavy building blocks of physical reality. This magnificent, violent flash is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for the eventual emergence of complex, dynamic planetary systems. Journeying far beyond the immediate devastating blast zone, The radiant light of the explosion travels quietly through the vast, empty gulfs of deep space. Eventually, this perfectly preserved travelling wave of ancient photons reaches the distant skies of quiet worlds entirely untouched by the physical destruction. To hypothetical observers safely standing on these remote planets, a spectacular and completely unexpected celestial event suddenly unfolds directly above them. A brilliant, piercing point of pure light abruptly ignites in a region of the night sky that was previously completely dark and entirely unassuming. Ancient human astronomers, witnessing remarkably similar events, often referred to them as unpredictable guest stars, quietly marvelling at their sudden, inexplicable arrival. They had absolutely no way of knowing that they were actually watching the massively delayed, ghostly replay of a magnificent cosmic death. This intensely bright, newly arrived beacon completely alters the familiar, comforting patterns of their local constellations for many consecutive, awe-inspiring months. It serves as a stark, glaring visual reminder that the seemingly eternal, unchanging heavens are actually incredibly dynamic, violent, and deeply temporary. The light travels like a silent, glowing telegram, meticulously delivering the news of a neighbouring star's demise across impossible gulfs of distance. Hanging prominently in the distant sky, the sudden, overwhelming radiance stubbornly holds its peak brightness for several long, awe-inspiring weeks. This plateau of brilliant light is maintained by the radioactive decay of the newly forged isotopes still safely hidden deep within the expanding cloud of debris. The heavily unstable elements act like a secondary internal atomic battery, keeping the shattered nebula fiercely illuminated long after the initial blast has passed. However, as these finite radioactive reserves are steadily and inevitably exhausted, the brilliant celestial beacon naturally begins a very slow, highly graceful fade. The aggressive, piercing white light gradually softens, dimming almost imperceptibly night after night, as the aggressively expanding gases spread ever thinner into the vacuum. The sudden, luminous interloper in the night sky begins to politely retreat, slowly returning the stolen darkness to the surrounding ancient constellations. Feel the rhythmic, calming beat of your own heart gently slowing as you rest, beautifully mirroring the gentle, inevitable dimming of the stellar fires. The frantic, unimaginably violent energy of the initial eruption is entirely spent, successfully replaced by a lingering, deeply cooling afterglow that spans across the void. This prolonged, peaceful fading process allows distant observers ample time to silently witness the final, glowing embers of the permanently extinguished giant. Fading slowly into a ghostly, faint telescopic smudge, this once brilliant cosmic beacon leaves a profound, lingering impact on the surrounding galaxy. The long journey of its fading light serves as a silent, spectacular message of both total destruction and miraculous heavy element rebirth broadcast across the cosmos. It tells a violent, deeply beautiful story of a monumental sacrifice that ultimately guarantees the magnificent continuation of galactic chemical evolution. The initial, blindingly bright flash aggressively cleared away the old, stagnant interstellar medium, while the trailing, heavily cooling dust uniquely enriched the void with absolute possibility. Every single photon that successfully reaches a distant telescope carries the precise, undeniable spectral signature of newly forged gold, heavy oxygen, and dense iron. It is a luminous, expanding monument to the inescapable cycle of cosmic recycling, entirely visible across millions of light-years of empty space. The monumental cycle of cosmic recycling continues its patient and transformative work as the once violent debris begins to settle into a vast ethereal structure known as a nebula. What was previously a chaotic, white-hot ball of blinding fire expands and thins, revealing the intricate, ghostly textures of a shredded star that now spans dozens of light-years in every direction. This celestial cemetery is not a place of stagnant silence, but a dynamic, ever-changing cloud of luminous gas that acts as a colourful bridge between the past and the future. The shredded remains of the original giant, now cooled and spread across the void, begin to organise themselves into complex shells and overlapping layers of matter that catch the light of distant suns. These vast remnants form a celestial cathedral of colour and light, illuminated from within by the dying embers of the central core and the radioactive glow of newly forged elements. It is a slow-motion transformation that turns a moment of supreme destruction into a lasting structural masterpiece of the deep dark, preserving the star's legacy for millennia. Within this newborn nebula, the physical boundaries between the star's guts and the interstellar medium become beautifully blurred and indistinguishable as they merge into a single cosmic entity. The star's internal elements, forged in the final seconds of its life, are now free to wander through the immense waiting vacuum, seeding the galaxy with the ingredients for new worlds. This grand architectural project will persist for tens of thousands of years, standing as a luminous ghost that reminds the universe of the power inherent in every stellar death. Wisps of glowing hydrogen, the most abundant and primordial element in the entire cosmos, create delicate, lace-like structures that drift peacefully through the deep vacuum. These ethereal filaments look like fine, translucent silk draped across the background of distant stars, catching the faint ambient light of the surrounding galaxy. They trace the jagged and chaotic path of the initial shockwave, frozen in a state of perpetual expansion that seems almost static to the human eye. The hydrogen atoms are continuously energized by the intense radiation still pouring out from the central wreckage, causing them to emit a soft crimson radiance. This ruby-coloured glow outlines the outermost reaches of the nebula, defining the boundary where the star's remains meet the cold, empty interstellar medium. Each individual strand of gas is a tenuous thread of history, a physical record of the violent forces that tore the red supergiant apart so long ago. If we were to look closer, these lace-like structures reveal a complex, fractal-like complexity that repeats across staggering scales of distance within the expanding cloud. They are the cooling, thinning memories of the star's vast atmosphere, now drifting gracefully toward an uncertain future in the galactic arms. This delicate tapestry provides a sense of profound fragility, masking the extreme violence that characterized its birth and the monumental energy that continues to drive its expansion. Oxygen atoms, forged during the star's long life and expelled during its final breath, emit a hauntingly soft green glow as they are energized by the remnant. This specific luminescence occurs when the atoms are struck by the high-energy ultraviolet light still radiating from the central stellar wreckage, causing them to vibrate at a precise frequency. In the near vacuum of space, this forbidden light creates a spectral emerald hue that is rarely seen in more dense planetary environments. This green radiation often concentrates in the inner regions of the expanding cloud, forming a vibrant heart of light within the broader Crimson Nebula. It highlights the regions where the initial explosion was most intense, marking the paths of the heaviest and most concentrated jets of newly forged matter. The result is a multicoloured masterpiece, a celestial painting where different elements announce their presence through unique and specific colours across the void. Surprisingly, the universe uses these distinct colours to tell the detailed story of the star's internal chemical makeup and its long history. The glowing oxygen serves as a vibrant marker for the layers of the star that existed just above the iron core before the final collapse occurred. This soft emerald luminescence adds a layer of surreal, otherworldly beauty to the expanding wreckage, turning the debris into a magnificent jewel of the night sky. As the shock waves continue their outward journey, they plough relentlessly into the surrounding interstellar dust and gas, creating a dramatic cosmic snowplow effect. This interaction compresses the pre-existing material of the galaxy, piling it up into thick, dense ridges that glow with the heat of the impact. The nebula is not merely expanding into empty space, but is actively shaping and carving the surrounding galactic landscape with its immense momentum. This compression can eventually trigger the birth of new stars by forcing giant molecular clouds to collapse under their own weight in the wake of the blast. The destruction of one star thus directly facilitates the creation of hundreds more, maintaining the eternal and rhythmic pulse of galactic life and death. The snowplow effect creates massive glowing pillars and dark, dusty silhouettes that give the nebula its characteristic three-dimensional depth and form. Notice the heavy, effortless weight of your limbs as they press into the surface beneath you, a grounding force that connects you to the Earth. Similarly, the shockwaves of a supernova provide the necessary pressure to ground wandering gas and turn it into the solid foundations of future worlds. This violent interaction between the star's remains and the interstellar medium is the primary mechanism that drives the evolution of the entire cosmos. These expanding shells of stellar material can travel through the void for thousands of years before finally slowing to a halt against the resistance of space. Their momentum is so vast that even the friction of the interstellar medium takes many millennia to noticeably dampen their incredible light-speed velocity. Across centuries, the nebula grows from a tiny bright point into a massive sprawling complex that can be seen across vast distances by any telescope. The shells act as a chronological record, with the outermost layers representing the very first moments of the star's catastrophic eruption into the dark. As the nebula ages, its features become more diffuse and ghostly, slowly blending into the general background of the galaxy like a fading dream. This slow-motion expansion allows the universe to preserve the physical evidence of the supernova for a duration that far exceeds the span of human civilization. This structure provides a persistent monument to a singular moment of extreme power, a long-lasting echo of a stellar death cry that persists for eons. The longevity of these shells ensures that the star's final message remains legible to any curious intelligence in the vicinity for ages to come. Over the course of eons, the nebula serves as a beacon of change, marking the site where a giant once stood and gave its life for the future. Ancient astronomers, looking up with naked eyes, recorded the sudden appearance of these expanding clouds without ever knowing their truly violent and destructive origins. They saw guest stars that would linger for many months before fading into faint ghostly smudges that could only be rediscovered centuries later with powerful modern telescopes. To these early observers, the event was a mystical omen or a temporary visitor in the otherwise unchanging and eternal firmament of the night. The meticulous records kept by Chinese, Japanese, and Arab scholars have provided modern scientists with an invaluable timeline for the evolution of these remnants. By matching ancient descriptions with current telescopic images, we can calculate the exact speed and energy of explosions that occurred over 1,000 years ago. These historical accounts serve as a vital bridge between the subjective wonder of the past and the objective data of the present age. The Crab Nebula stands as one of the most famous examples of a stellar remnant that still expands today from an explosion witnessed nearly 1,000 years ago. In the year 1054, a star in the constellation Taurus erupted with such brilliance that it was visible during the day for over 3 weeks. Today, that same explosion has grown into a spectacular, colourful tangle of gas and dust that continues to rush outward at millions of miles per hour. At the heart of this glowing complex lies a pulsar, the spinning remnant of the original star's core, which acts as a rhythmic engine for the entire nebula. The energy from this pulsar keeps the surrounding gas glowing with a fierce and persistent intensity that would otherwise have faded long ago into the dark. The Crab Nebula is a living laboratory where we can see the direct results of a supernova in real time, observing changes in its structure year by year. Feel the calm, steady rhythm of your own breath as it flows in and out, a personal pulse that sustains your quiet and peaceful presence. In much the same way, the central pulsar provides a rhythmic vitality that sustains the glowing beauty of the Crab Nebula against the encroaching dark. This specific remnant remains a masterpiece of the night sky, a vibrant testament to the enduring power of a single stellar death across the ages. Surprisingly, the universe employs invisible magnetic fields to twist and tangle the expanding gas into intricate glowing ribbons of matter that dance through the void. These fields, which were compressed and amplified during the star's initial collapse, act like a cosmic loom that guides the flow of the erupting plasma. They prevent the debris from expanding in a simple sphere, instead creating the complex and chaotic textures we see through our modern instruments. The interaction between the charged particles of the explosion and the tangled magnetic lines produces a specific type of radiation called synchrotron light. This creates a soft, pervasive blue glow that fills the gaps between the colourful filaments of hydrogen and oxygen throughout the cloud. The magnetic fields act as the nervous system of the nebula, coordinating its expansion and influencing the final distribution of its newly forged elements. These invisible forces create loops, knots, and swirling vortices within the glowing cloud, adding a sense of dynamic and fluid motion to the wreckage. They are the hidden architects of the nebula's beauty, ensuring that every supernova remnant possesses a unique and unmistakable structural identity that sets it apart. The result is a highly complex three-dimensional sculpture carved by the most fundamental and powerful forces of physics in the deep dark. Slowly fading over millions of years, these grand remnants deeply and permanently enrich their entire galactic neighbourhood with heavy and precious elements. The gold, iron, and oxygen forged in the fire of the explosion are eventually incorporated into the surrounding gas clouds that will form future stars. Without this constant recycling of matter, the galaxy would eventually run out of the complex materials needed to support the diversity of the cosmos. The nebula acts as a localized reservoir of chemical complexity, a treasure chest of heavy atoms waiting for the next cycle of star formation. As the cloud spreads thin, its contents become the fundamental building blocks for the next generation of planets, and perhaps the life that will eventually inhabit them. This process ensures that the death of one star is never an end, but a vital and generous contribution to the future of the universe. Each nebula is a gift from the past to the future, a silent promise that the journey of complexity will continue long after the explosion is forgotten. Over immense timescales, the entire chemical history of a galaxy is written in the fading echoes of these spectacular and violent explosions. The pollution provided by the supernova is actually the most precious substance in the galaxy, a concentrated dose of possibility delivered directly to the void. The once violent and terrifying explosion eventually leaves behind a surprisingly tranquil and serene portrait of stellar debris that drifts forever through the stars. What began as an apocalyptic eruption of light and heat matures into a quiet, glowing tapestry that moves peacefully through the deep and silent dark. The raw, destructive power of the initial collapse has been fully converted into a lasting and beautiful structure that adds to the majesty of the sky. This transition from chaos to peace is one of the most profound paradoxes of the cosmos, showing that beauty can emerge from the most extreme destruction. The final state of the supernova is not a void, but a complex and colourful cloud that serves as a quiet monument to the star that once was. It is a portrait of change, of movement, and of the incredible resilience of matter in the face of absolute gravitational defeat. Deep within the heart of that monumental wreckage, a tiny and defiant survivor remains after the absolute gravitational defeat of the original giant. This is a neutron star, a sphere so compact it contains more mass than our Sun within the diameter of a single terrestrial city. It stands as the ultimate victor of the collapse, a condensed kernel of reality that refused to be completely extinguished during the star's final, violent breath. This remnant is a quiet monument to the star's former glory, a silent witness to the cataclysm that created its unique and condensed form. It sits in the centre of the glowing nebula, a heavy and immovable heart that will endure for countless billions of years as a ghost of its former self. The surrounding gas clouds reflect its light, but the star itself remains a concentrated point of pure, unyielding matter. This bizarre object represents a state of matter so extreme, it borders on the impossible, packing the bulk of a massive mountain range into the space of a single marble. The material is so dense that the empty space between atoms has been completely crushed out of existence, leaving only a solid, glowing sea of subatomic particles. If you were to scoop a single teaspoon of this stellar material, it would weigh as much as 1 billion tons on our planet's surface. This weight is equivalent to the mass of nearly 900 Great Pyramids of Giza, condensed into a tiny metallic sliver of concentrated matter. Such a teaspoon would be so heavy it would instantly plummet through any container, through the planet's crust, and straight into the molten core of our world. This density defies our every sensory expectation, creating a substance that behaves more like a single, giant atomic nucleus than a piece of rock or gas. It is the most concentrated form of matter in the observable universe, a literal block of condensed physical reality. Every cubic centimetre of this star is a masterpiece of compression, a testament to the power of a supernova's final, inward plunge into the unknown. The particles are pressed together like grapes in a press, losing their individual identities to become part of a singular, massive whole. Surprisingly, this tiny sphere carries magnetic fields trillions of times stronger than the one protecting our own Earth and its delicate, life-sustaining atmosphere. These invisible lines of force are so powerful they can distort the very atoms within their reach, stretching them into long, thin needles of matter. They sweep through the surrounding vacuum like silent, invisible scythes, orchestrating the motion of any stray particles that drift too close to the spinning core. The magnetic field is an extension of the star's spirit, an invisible architecture that reaches out into the surrounding nebula for millions of miles. This structure is so intense that it can even warp the vacuum of empty space itself, creating regions where light is forced to bend and twist in unexpected ways. The magnetic field captures any charged particles ejected in the initial explosion, whipping them into a frenzy of high-speed motion around the star's magnetic equator. It is a silent electromagnetic storm that never breaks, a constant pressure that defines the local environment of the remnant. This invisible power is the engine that drives the star's many strange and rhythmic behaviours, turning a dead core into a dynamic and terrifyingly powerful cosmic entity. The field glows with its own ghostly energy, illuminating the path for the radiation that will soon follow. Notice the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of your breath, a gentle pulse that keeps you grounded in this peaceful and protected moment of rest. Much like your own breathing, the neutron star projects beams of intense radiation from its magnetic poles that sweep across the galaxy with absolute precision. These twin searchlights of energy pierce the interstellar dark, acting as an eternal cosmic lighthouse for the deep, surrounding void that now holds the star's remains. Because the star is spinning, these beams rotate through space like a giant lighthouse lamp, crossing our field of vision at perfectly timed intervals. This structure creates a rhythmic pattern of flashes that can be seen across thousands of light years by those with the right instruments to see. The light is not the warm, friendly glow of a stable sun, but a concentrated stream of high-energy particles and invisible gamma rays. These beams are the last vestiges of the star's rotational energy, being bled away into the darkness one flash at a time over millions of years. It is a lonely and beautiful sight, a persistent signal sent out into the infinite expanse of the universe from a heart that should be dead. Each sweep of the beam lights up the distant dust clouds, casting long and flickering shadows across the face of the nebula. We perceive these sweeping beams not as light, but as regular, soothing pulses of radio waves that hum across the vastness of space like a ghost. To a radio telescope, the star sounds like a ticking clock, a persistent and rhythmic signal that breaks the silence of the celestial background. These pulses are the audible heartbeat of the dead star, a steady vibration that carries through the vacuum of time to reach our distant ears. The pulses reach us across the void, travelling through gas and dust to tell us that the heart of the supernova is still beating rhythmically. It is a quiet, rhythmic lullaby that reminds us that even in death, a star can find a way to make its presence felt and its voice heard. The steady hum of the radio waves is a bridge between the violent past and the quiet, enduring present. Some of these dead stars spin hundreds of times every single second, moving with a speed that defies every earthly law of physics and motion. Imagine a city-sized sphere of solid iron rotating as fast as the blades of a high-speed blender, yet remaining perfectly intact and perfectly balanced. Their surfaces move at a significant fraction of the speed of light, yet they are held together by the same crushing gravity that birthed them during the supernova. This frenetic, high-speed dancing creates a blur of kinetic energy that powers the surrounding nebula, keeping the stellar ghost visible to our eyes. The rotation is so fast that it causes the star to bulge slightly at its equator, a subtle distortion of its otherwise perfect and mathematical spherical shape. This spinning generates a massive amount of centrifugal force, yet the star's gravity is so immense that it keeps every atom of iron and neutron firmly in place. This high-speed rotation is the final legacy of the original star's spin, condensed down into a tiny area until it reached this manic, rhythmic speed. It is a beautiful and terrifying display of conservation of momentum, a spinning top that will take billions of years to finally slow down and stop. The magnetic poles and the rotational poles are often slightly misaligned, causing the star to wobble and dance in a complex rhythmic pattern. Allow your muscles to completely relax, sinking heavily into your comfortable resting place, completely free of any tension or cosmic weight from the world. Imagine the soles of your feet resting softly against a cool, solid floor, providing a sense of stability and permanence in your quiet world. Below the frantic energy of the pulse's exterior lies a flawless, frictionless crust composed of solid, crystalline iron that has been forged in the heat of the explosion. This surface is billions of times harder than any steel found on Earth, a perfect and unyielding shell that encapsulates the star's mysterious and fluid interior. This crust is so smooth that the tallest mountain on the star's surface would be no higher than a few millimeters, a tiny wrinkle on a vast metallic ocean. The iron atoms here are squeezed into a rigid lattice that can withstand the incredible weight of the star's gravity without ever cracking or failing. It is a cold and beautiful shell, a metallic skin that protects the strange, fluid matter that lies just beneath the surface of the core. This crust is the final armour of the star, a solid barrier that separates the vacuum of space from the dense and churning nuclear heart. Deep beneath this layer, the matter begins to stretch and deform, forming structures known as nuclear pasta that are both fluid and rigid at the same time. Deep inside this iron shell, the laws of physics transform once again into a state of superfluidity, where a sea of neutrons flows without any friction. This liquid interior can spin and swirl forever without ever slowing down, retaining its rotational energy for billions of years without losing a single drop of momentum. It is a hidden, subterranean ocean of pure nuclear matter, moving in a silent and eternal current that defines the star's internal life and steady pulse. It is a serene and endless flow, a silent river of matter that remains hidden away from the prying eyes of the rest of the universe. This liquid heart is the true source of the star's longevity, a reservoir of motion that will keep the pulsar ticking for countless generations to come. The superfluid even allows for superconducting properties, creating a system where electrical currents flow forever without resistance. A subtle starquake occasionally ripples across its perfectly smooth exterior as the crust adjusts to the star's incredibly slow loss of rotational energy over time. These tremors occur when the solid iron shell can no longer support its shape, as the star's spin begins to very gradually decelerate over millions of years. Though the actual physical shift in the crust might be less than the width of a human hair, the energy released is enough to create a massive flare of radiation. These starquakes are the only sounds heard in this silent heart, momentary adjustments in a structure that is otherwise the picture of absolute stability. Surprisingly, these events can be detected from Earth, appearing as a sudden and temporary increase in the speed of the star's rhythmic pulses. It is as if the cosmic clock has suddenly skipped a beat, before settling back into its regular and predictable pace for another few thousand years. These quakes remind us that even the hardest surfaces in the universe must eventually yield to the slow and steady pressure of passing time. They are the size of a dying giant, the small and quiet fractures that show the star is still aging, even in its state of near-perfect permanence. Each quake is a small step in the long and slow journey of the star toward its final, cold rest. The pulsar sings a quiet, rhythmic lullaby that can last for billions of years, outlasting the very star that gave it birth by an unimaginable span. Feel the heavy, relaxing stillness of your entire body now, a quiet state that allows you to drift toward a deeper and more profound sense of peace. This steady signal will continue to sweep across the galaxy long after our own sun has begun its own slow decline toward the dark. It remains a persistent ticking remnant of a grand and violent explosion, a steady and faithful guide in the dark until the very end of time. Eventually the pulsar will slow down and its beams will fade, leaving behind a cold and dark sphere of neutrons that drifts silently through the stars. But until that moment comes, it will continue to provide its rhythmic service to the universe, a heartbeat that marks the passing of the ages. It is a beautiful and tranquil conclusion to the star's story, a final state of being that is defined by regularity, precision, and a quiet, enduring grace. The silent heart beats on, a testament to the resilience of matter and the eternal rhythmic beauty of the wide and waiting cosmos. A gentle wind of particles continues to blow outward from the star, feeding the nebula and keeping the dream of life alive. This dream of life is carried forward by a gentle wind of particles that travels through the cooling wake of the expanding remnant, beginning a quiet and profound transformation. As the temperatures drop far from the shattered core, the once vaporized metals and minerals begin to find one another in the dark, sticking together to form the first microscopic dust grains. These tiny, solid specks coalesce in the silence of the void, creating a fine, heavy powder that drifts like a ghostly mist through the wreckage. This process is remarkably slow and patient, occurring over decades as the heat of the initial blast dissipates into the infinite chill of the surrounding universe. The chemistry of the star, once locked in a state of high-energy plasma, now organizes itself into solid, durable structures that will survive for billions of years. You might imagine this as a celestial snowfall where the individual flakes are made of iron, silicon, and carbon, settling gently into the waiting arms of the nebula. It is the first step in the long and beautiful process of turning a violent explosion into the solid ground of a future world. Every atom of this heavy powder carries the potential for something much larger, a quiet promise of complexity that is just beginning to manifest. The cooling wake becomes a sanctuary for these new materials, allowing them to stabilize before their long journey across the galaxy begins. Surprisingly, the universe ensures these microscopic particles serve as tiny, indelible time capsules, carrying the precise chemical signature of the stellar explosion within their crystalline structures. Each grain of dust is a physical ledger, recording the exact moment when oxygen, silicon, and iron were forged in the star's final, desperate breath. They bear the unique atomic fingerprints of a giant that no longer exists, ensuring that the history of the supernova is written into the very matter that survives it. These signatures allow future observers to trace the lineage of the elements, identifying which specific star provided the materials for their own celestial neighborhood. The dust does not just carry mass, it carries a detailed narrative of heat, pressure, and nuclear transformation that defines the character of the entire galaxy. As these particles drift, they remain pristine and uncorrupted, shielded by their own dense structures from the corrosive radiation of the deep dark. They are the ultimate witnesses to the power of the supernova, preserving the memory of the blast in every single atom they contain. Even after billions of years, the isotopic ratios within these grains remain unchanged, a permanent record of a long-lost cosmic event. This enduring evidence ensures that the legacy of the star is never truly forgotten by the universe. Drifting endlessly through the vast, silent corridors of the galaxy, this elemental soot eventually encounters ancient primordial gas clouds that have remained untouched since the beginning of time. These vast cold nurseries of hydrogen and helium receive the heavy ash of the supernova, absorbing the newly forged elements into their own sprawling dark masses. It is a slow and graceful mixing, a celestial infusion where the complex debris of a dead star provides the necessary spice to enrich the flavourless gas of the early universe. The dark clouds, once transparent and simple, become opaque and complex as the dust grains settle into their depths and begin to block the light of distant suns. This mixture creates the perfect conditions for gravity to begin its next great work, pulling the enriched gas together to form new and more complex structures. The supernova's legacy is thus woven into the very fabric of the galactic medium, ensuring that the materials for life are distributed far beyond the site of the original explosion. It is a quiet merger of old and new, a meeting of the first elements and the last. This enrichment process turns a sterile cloud into a fertile nursery, capable of birthing stars that will one day host planets and moons. The dust becomes the catalyst for a new generation of cosmic architecture, changing the future of the galaxy one grain at a time. If we were to look closer at the history of our own home, we would find that the local solar system was born from such a cold, dark cloud enriched by these very ashes. Long before the sun first ignited, a nearby supernova scattered its heavy elements into our ancestral nebula, providing the solid materials needed to build planets, moons, and everything we know. We are the direct descendants of a stellar cataclysm, existing only because a massive star once gave its life to fertilize the corner of the galaxy we now inhabit. This realization turns our local neighborhood into a sacred site of cosmic recycling, where the ruins of an ancient giant have been repurposed into the familiar landscapes of our lives. The very ground you walk upon, and the water that sustains you, are the recycled remains of that long-dead star, brought together by the patient pull of gravity over billions of years. Our sun is a second-generation star, fueled and built by the wreckage of those who came before, standing as a testament to the endurance of matter. The history of our world is inseparable from the history of that original brilliant flash in the dark. We carry the physical evidence of that ancient death in every stone and drop of rain, a permanent connection to the deep past. It is a heritage of fire and ash that has finally found peace in the stability of our local world. Deep within the quiet rhythm of your own body, the iron currently flowing through your blood was forged in the white-hot, dying moments of an ancient star. Every oxygen-carrying hemoglobin molecule is a tiny piece of a supernova's legacy, a metallic survivor of a collapse that occurred billions of years ago and light years away. Feel the weight of your own existence as you rest, a heavy and solid presence that is constructed entirely from the cooling embers of a long-extinguished celestial furnace. This iron did not exist before the supernova. It is a gift from the extreme pressure of the core's collapse, brought into being specifically to support the future of life. As you breathe, you're utilizing the tools created by the most violent event in the universe to sustain your own peaceful and quiet presence. It is a profound connection that links your heartbeat to the pulse of a dying giant, a physical continuity that spans the entire history of the cosmos. You're quite literally made of star stuff, an organised collection of atoms that have survived a journey of unimaginable distance and time. This realisation invites a sense of deep kinship with the universe, a physical proof that you are part of a much larger story. Every breath you take is powered by the same energy that once tore a star asunder. Meteorites that occasionally fall to our world still carry pristine, microscopic diamonds that were created in the extreme pressure and heat of those original stellar blasts. These pre-solar grains survived the formation of the sun and the planets, remaining unchanged for eons as they drifted through the cold, airless void of space. They are the hardest and most durable witnesses to the explosion, glittering reminders that even the most violent destruction can leave behind objects of incredible beauty and strength. When these stones land on Earth, they bring with them a sample of the environment that existed before our solar system even had a name. Scientists can examine these tiny jewels to understand the conditions within the supernova's expanding shell, peering back through time to see the birth of our own elements. Each diamond is a tiny, glittering star shard, a piece of the red supergiant's heart that has been polished by the friction of space and delivered to our doorstep. They prove that the materials of the universe are both ancient and resilient, capable of surviving the most extreme conditions to tell their story. These diamonds are not just gems, they are scientific treasures that unlock the secrets of our cosmic origin. They stand as eternal, unyielding monuments to the power of the supernova that created them. This structure of life and death reveals that a supernova essentially acts as a gentle, patient gardener, seeding the barren and simple cosmos with the complexity required for growth. Without this aggressive distribution of heavy elements, the universe would remain a desert of simple gases, incapable of ever producing anything more complex than a flickering flame in the dark. The explosion is a generous act of dispersal, a grand sowing of atomic seeds that will one day sprout into the diverse landscapes of countless alien worlds. The shockwaves act as the gardener's hands, pushing the fertile dust into the dark corners of the galaxy, where it can settle and begin the work of creation. Every supernova adds a new layer of richness to the galactic soil, making the universe a little more complex and a little more capable of supporting life with each passing eon. It is a process that rewards patience, as the fruits of this labour may not appear for billions of years after the initial flash has faded. The gardener moves on, leaving behind a trail of potential that will eventually bloom into the next generation of suns. This quiet work continues across the entire galaxy, building a mosaic of habitable zones and fertile clouds. The end of the star is the planting of 1 billion new beginnings. Notice the solid, unyielding strength of your own frame, the bones that support you, and the teeth that allow you to interact with the world around you. The calcium that provides this essential hardness began its long and arduous journey in the heart of a stellar shockwave, compressed into existence by forces that dwarf any human endeavour. Every shard of bone is a collection of cosmic artefacts, a physical assembly of elements that have travelled through the deep dark to finally find a home within your living form. This mineral was once floating as a fine, heavy powder in a distant nebula, waiting for the right conditions to be gathered up into a planet and eventually into a living being. The architecture of your body is a masterpiece of cosmic engineering, utilising the strongest materials the universe has to offer to create a vessel for consciousness and awareness. You carry the strength of the supernova within you, a silent and sturdy legacy that allows you to stand tall in the face of the world. It is a gift of durability and form, born from the most chaotic moment of a star's long life. Your very structure is a record of the universe's ability to turn chaos into order and strength. You are a living testament to the endurance of the elements. Invisible currents of interstellar wind, driven by the light of distant suns and the motion of the galactic disk, carry these elemental seeds across vast light years. The dust travels in slow-moving rivers of matter, weaving through the stars like a fine, heavy powder, settling gently onto a dark surface. It is a silent migration of materials, a continental drift on a galactic scale that ensures no part of the universe is ever truly isolated from the gifts of a supernova. These winds are the circulatory system of the galaxy, moving the lifeblood of heavy elements from the sites of destruction to the sites of future birth. They move with a quiet, persistent force, pushing the dust through the vacuum with a grace that belies the violent origin of the particles themselves. Over millions of years, this steady movement ensures that the ingredients for planets are evenly distributed throughout the spiral arms, creating a fertile environment for the next cycle of creation. The wind never stops, carrying the story of the stars from one side of the galaxy to the other in a never-ending cycle of movement. It is a slow and beautiful dance of elements, a quiet journey through the dark that connects every star in the system. The dust finds its way home eventually, settling into the heart of a new nebula. This transition represents the ultimate resilience of the universe, where even the most violent death is repurposed into the foundations of something new and meaningful. The fertile ground created by the supernova will one day support oceans, atmospheres, and perhaps minds capable of wondering about their own origins. It is a grand and beautiful synthesis of physics and fate, a cycle that ensures the light will always find a way to return to the dark. The journey of the dust is the journey of everything we know, a slow and steady climb toward the light of a new day. As you close your eyes and drift into your own quiet rest, remember that the universe is constantly rebuilding itself from its own remains. The echoes of the supernova are the music of our existence, a quiet and eternal song of rebirth. If the original star is massive enough, not even the incredible, quantum-defying resilience of a neutron star can halt the final, absolute plunge of the collapse. While the dense sea of neutrons provides a sturdy wall for many dying stars, some giants possess a gravitational weight so immense that it simply overpowers the fundamental laws of subatomic stability. The outward push of neutron degeneracy pressure, which usually holds the line against total annihilation, is crushed like a fragile shell under the weight of a dozen suns. The star's final attempt at existence as a physical object is swept away by a force that demands absolute, uncompromised contraction. In this extreme scenario, the inward rush does not find a stopping point, but instead accelerates into a finality that the rest of the universe can only watch from a distance. It is a profound transition from a state of being to a state of infinite disappearance. The core folds inward upon itself with such unstoppable momentum that it eventually disappears from the observable universe entirely. This is not a simple shrinking or a fading of light, but a geometric folding of the very fabric of space and time around the dying star's heart. As the mass continues its lightspeed descent into the center, the curvature of the surrounding space becomes so extreme that it eventually pinches off from the rest of reality. To any observer in the outside world, the physical center of the star simply ceases to occupy a detectable location in the three-dimensional map of the cosmos. It retreats into a private pocket of existence, leaving behind only the ghost of its gravitational influence to tell the tale of its former presence. The core has essentially excavated a hole in the universe, a region where the standard coordinate systems of length and width no longer apply. This disappearance is the most radical act of cosmic privacy, a total withdrawal from the visual and physical interactions of the wider galaxy. The star has not merely died, it has exited the stage of the observable world, leaving a profound void where its majestic presence once dominated the sky. What remains is a mystery that even the most powerful telescopes cannot hope to penetrate. A black hole does not behave like a normal object, but rather like a permanent feature of the space it inhabits, a lightless abyss that swallows all memory of its origin. This perfect darkness is the result of gravity becoming so powerful that it literally closes the door on the universe, preventing even the fastest energy from leaking out. The core has become a sinkhole in reality, a place where everything goes in and nothing ever comes back out. The newly formed event horizon marks a definitive point of no return, where even the fastest light itself is permanently trapped within a silent, invisible cage. This boundary is not a physical surface made of matter, but a mathematical edge in space where the escape velocity exactly equals the speed of light. Once a photon or a particle crosses this invisible line, its future path is determined solely by the inward pulling centre, with no possible trajectory leading back to the outside world. It is the ultimate one-way street of the cosmos, a threshold where the laws of cause and effect are permanently separated by a veil of absolute shadows. Behind this silent spherical boundary, the universe is keeping its secrets in a vault that can never be opened or raided by the light. The event horizon serves as a perfect insulator, preventing the extreme conditions of the interior from ever disturbing the peace of the wider galaxy. Notice the gentle rhythmic beating of your own heart as you lie in the quiet safety of your world, a steady pulse of life in a universe of vast, dark boundaries. This internal rhythm is yours alone, a private constant in a reality that contains places where even time and light must obey different rules. The event horizon stands as a silent sentinel, guarding the entrance to a realm that remains forever beyond our reach. Time slows to a surreal crawl for anything approaching this silent spherical boundary, stretching moments into eternities as the gravitational pull warps the very flow of existence. According to the principles of general relativity, the closer one gets to a massive object, the slower time passes relative to the distant stars. At the edge of the event horizon, this effect becomes so extreme that a single second for a falling observer could represent millions of years for the universe outside. If we could watch an object falling toward the black hole, we would see it appear to freeze at the boundary, its light shifting to a deep, invisible red as it lingers in a state of perpetual arrival. This gravitational time dilation turns the area around the black hole into a reservoir of frozen history, where the final moments of a star's light are preserved in a slow-motion dance. The black hole does not just consume matter, it distorts the very concept of the now, creating a pocket of reality where the future and the past collide. While the spectacular supernova explosion still rages in the outer layers, the heart of the star has already vanished into an infinitesimal singularity. This creates a strange and paradoxical duality where a massive light-year spanning cloud of fire is expanding outward while a tiny, infinitely dense point is contracting inward. The explosion is the public face of the star's death, but the black hole is the private reality of its ultimate transformation. The debris of the nebula continues to enrich the galaxy with heavy elements and beautiful colours, unaware that the foundation it once rested upon has been replaced by a lightless abyss. This separation of the core from its envelope is the final divorce of the star's identity, splitting its legacy into two distinct and irreconcilable parts. One part becomes the dust of new worlds, while the other becomes a permanent scar in the fabric of space-time. Surprisingly, the universe allows these two extremes to exist side by side, the most violent expansion and the most absolute contraction occurring at the exact same moment. The singularity at the centre holds all the mass that was not expelled, compressed into a point with zero volume and infinite density. It is the ultimate paradox of physics, a place where the math of the universe reaches its limit and breaks into a beautiful, silent mystery. This lingering gravitational ghost will quietly consume drifting gas and dust for all eternity, growing larger in the shadows of the expanding nebula. While it is no longer visible, the black hole remains a powerful actor in the galactic theatre, exerting a silent pull on anything that wanders too close to its dark domain. Stray atoms, cooling dust grains, and even the light of distant stars are slowly spiralling into its grasp, feeding the invisible giant that sits at the centre of the wreckage. As it consumes more matter, the event horizon gradually expands, growing in direct proportion to the mass it has successfully claimed from the void. This growth is a slow and patient process, a gradual accumulation of weight that ensures the black hole, will outlast everything else in the surrounding region. It is a predator that never sleeps, a dark anchor that gathers the remains of the universe to itself with a persistent and undeniable force. Allow your body to sink even deeper into a state of total, undisturbed relaxation, letting go of the need to move or act in this peaceful moment. In the deep dark of the nebula, the black hole exerts a similar effortless pull, drawing the universe into its quiet and lightless embrace. It is a consumer that never fills, a silent guardian of the matter that has finally reached its ultimate and final destination. Space and time twist and warp together around this perfectly still, invisible sphere, creating a literal whirlpool in the very fabric of reality. As the original star was spinning rapidly before its collapse, that rotational energy is preserved in the space surrounding the newly born black hole. This effect, known as frame dragging, forces the surrounding vacuum to rotate along with the invisible mass, creating a dizzying spiral that affects everything in the vicinity. The path of light is bent into circles, and the coordinates of space itself are dragged around the center like water swirling down a drain. This structure creates a region of extreme turbulence that is entirely invisible to the naked eye, a hidden vortex that governs the motion of the nearby stars and gas. The black hole is not just sitting in space, it is actively manipulating the environment, weaving the dimensions of height, width, depth, and time into a complex and beautiful knot. If we were to look closer at this invisible whirlpool, we would see the ultimate expression of gravity's power to rewrite the rules of the universe. It is a masterpiece of geometric engineering, a silent and spinning sculpture carved from the vacuum itself. The twisting of space-time is the final signature of the star's former motion, a ghostly legacy that persists long after the physical body has vanished. Despite the unimaginable violence of their birth and the terrifying power they possess, black holes exist as the quietest and most tranquil objects in the entire universe. Once the initial collapse is complete and the event horizon is established, the interior becomes a place of absolute and unyielding silence. There are no nuclear explosions, no churning gases, and no rhythmic pulses to break the stillness of the lightless abyss. A black hole is the ultimate expression of thermodynamic equilibrium, a state of being where all activity has been reduced to a singular and perfectly stable point. It does not radiate heat, it does not emit sound, and it does not change its form unless it is actively consuming new matter. It is an island of total peace in a galaxy that is otherwise filled with the noise and chaos of stellar evolution and galactic collisions. This tranquility is a profound contrast to the roaring fires of the red supergiant that once occupied this same patch of space. The transition from the most energetic star to the most silent hole is the most dramatic shift in character imaginable. It reminds us that the ultimate fate of all things is a return to a state of quiet and eternal stillness, a final rest that even the light cannot disturb. Long after the surrounding stars have burned out and the galaxy itself has begun to fade, these dark monuments will remain, drifting through the shadows like the heavy anchors of a long-lost fleet. They hold within them the recycled mass of the most brilliant lives, preserving the essence of the star's power in a form that can never be destroyed. The black hole is the ultimate survivor, a testament to the endurance of matter and the absolute victory of gravity over time. As you finish your journey through the gravity trap, feel the profound and lasting sense of peace that comes from understanding these eternal structures. The universe is a place of grand cycles, and the black hole is the quiet pause at the end of the most powerful sentence. It is a silent and beautiful conclusion to the star's journey, a final state of being that is both a void and a monument. Beyond the silent monument of the collapsed core, the true and overwhelming power of a supernova is actually carried away by nearly massless, elusive particles known as neutrinos. While our eyes are naturally drawn to the spectacular fireworks of expanding gas and brilliant light, these phantom messengers represent the staggering majority of the star's final, violent energy. They are born in the trillions within the crushing inferno of the failing heart, yet they possess a ghostly quality that allows them to slip through the chaos entirely unnoticed and unhindered. This invisible flood of particles is the star's real legacy, a silent tidal wave of kinetic energy that washes over the galaxy in a single, instantaneous pulse. Though they possess almost no mass and carry no electric charge, their sheer, unimaginable numbers make them the primary drivers of the cosmic explosion's total thermodynamic budget. The visible eruption we celebrate as a supernova is merely a tiny, glowing fraction of the energy these spectral voyagers carry away into the infinite dark. They represent the ultimate hidden force of the universe, a vast and silent migration of energy that operates far beyond the reach of our limited biological senses. As the core fails, and the shockwave struggles to find its footing against the falling matter, the neutrinos are already departing the scene at nearly the speed of light. They are the true architects of the star's cooling, silently stripping the core of its heat and flinging it toward the furthest horizons of the waiting cosmos. These phantom particles move with such a delicate and subtle touch that they pass through planets, moons, and even the most massive stars as if they were nothing more than empty, unobstructed space. To a neutrino, a solid world of iron and rock appears as a transparent and ghostly mist, offering absolutely no resistance or obstacle to its forward momentum. They do not collide with atoms or get tangled in the webs of magnetic fields, choosing instead to haunt the physical world without ever truly touching its solid boundaries. Imagine a cool, phantom breeze passing straight through a mountain of solid stone without displacing a single grain of dust or warming the surrounding air. This is the sensation of the neutrino's journey, a travel through the dense material of the universe that leaves the surrounding world completely undisturbed and unaware of the passing flood. A single neutrino could travel through a block of solid lead light-years thick without ever bumping into a single atomic nucleus or losing a single drop of its initial energy. This total lack of interaction makes them the most difficult particles in the cosmos to detect or study, as they refuse to leave any trace of their arrival or departure. They are the ultimate cosmic ghosts, moving through the centres of suns and the hearts of distant galaxies with an ease that mocks our rigid concepts of solid reality. The entire physical universe is a vast open highway for these tireless travellers as they race forever toward the edge of time and space. Surprisingly, the universe is so saturated with this invisible flood that trillions of supernova neutrinos are flowing through your body every single second without leaving a trace or causing a single sensation. At this very moment, as you lie in the quiet sanctuary of your room, you're being bathed in the ghostly remains of countless ancient stellar explosions. This invisible rain of particles passes through your skin, your bones, and your very DNA with the same effortless grace it uses to pierce the heart of a giant planet. Feel the cool, steady rhythm of your breath and the soft weight of your resting body as it sinks into the surface beneath you, grounding you in the present. You are a physical entity in a solid world, yet you are simultaneously a transparent vessel for a cosmic tide that has travelled across the vastness of space. This constant, silent bombardment is a reminder that we are never truly isolated from the grand, violent events occurring in the distant reaches of our galaxy. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth, sheltered from the noise and radiation of the atmosphere, vast tanks filled with thousands of tons of pure water occasionally catch a single, fleeting neutrino spark. These massive detectors are built in the absolute silence of ancient mines and mountain tunnels, waiting for the 1 in a billion chance that a ghost particle will finally strike a water molecule. When this rare collision occurs, it releases a tiny ethereal flash of blue light known as Cherenkov radiation, which is immediately recorded by sensitive sensors. This flickering spark is the only physical evidence we have of the invisible flood that is constantly washing over our world from the depths of space. It is a monumental effort to capture a single moment of contact with a particle that prefers to remain a ghost, requiring years of patient observation in total darkness. These underground cathedrals of science are designed to listen to the silent whispers of the universe, turning a phantom breeze into a measurable event. Each tiny flash of light represents a direct link to a supernova that may have occurred thousands of light years away in a different corner of the galaxy. It is a beautiful and lonely pursuit, searching for the smallest possible sign of the largest possible explosion within the absolute stillness of a subterranean tank. In these hidden places, the invisible becomes visible for a brief glowing microsecond before returning to the shadows of the unknown and continuing its journey. If we were to look closer at the arrival times of cosmic signals, we would discover that neutrinos are the first true messengers to reach our world, often arriving hours before the visible light. Because they can escape the collapsing core of the star almost immediately, they get a significant head start on the photons that must struggle through the dense stellar atmosphere. They are the early warning system of the universe, silent heralds that announce the death of a giant long before the sky begins to glow. This temporal lead allows astronomers to prepare their telescopes and instruments, pointing them toward the exact location where the brilliant flash is about to appear. The neutrinos carry the news of the core's collapse while the surface of the star is still deceptively calm and unchanged from its previous state. It is a race across the light years where the ghosts always finish first, leaving the light to catch up in their invisible and silent wake. By the time the human eye sees the new star ignite in the night sky, the neutrino flood has already passed through the planet and continued its journey into the void. This early arrival is a gift of information from the very center of the catastrophe, providing a direct look at the physics of the collapse that light can never provide. They are the first to know the truth, carrying the secret of the star's demise through the dark before the rest of the galaxy can witness the spectacle. This structure of escape is unique to the ghost particles, as they flee the collapsing core almost instantaneously, without ever being slowed by the crushing density of the falling matter. While the light produced in the initial inferno is trapped and scattered by the opaque plasma for hours or even days, the neutrinos simply slip through the cracks of reality. They see the dense iron and the sea of neutrons not as a wall, but as a vast, open landscape that offers no resistance to their departure. Because they interact so weakly with the material of the star, they can carry the news of the collapse out into the universe at the exact moment it occurs. This allows them to preserve the high-energy signature of the initial implosion, providing a pristine record of the temperatures and pressures that existed in the heart of the giant. While the light is filtered and changed by the star's outer layers, the neutrinos remain pure and unaltered by their surroundings. They are the only particles capable of surviving the journey from the very center of the star without being corrupted or delayed by the surrounding chaos. This instant liberation is the primary reason they represent such a powerful tool for understanding the most extreme environments in the cosmos. In the seconds after the core fails, the neutrinos are already light years away, leaving the physical remains of the star to follow in a slow and violent expansion. The sheer scale of this invisible exodus is almost beyond comprehension, as these particles quietly carry away 99% of the total energy released during the massive explosion. While we marvel at the brilliant light and the kinetic force of the expanding nebula, these features represent only a tiny 1% remnant of the star's final power. The true weight of the supernova is not found in the fire or the shockwave, but in the silent spectral flood of neutrinos racing through the dark. This means that for every photon of light we see, there are millions of times more energy being transported by the ghost particles that we cannot perceive with our eyes. The collapse is essentially a massive machine for turning gravity and heat into a focused beam of invisible particles that drain the star of its life in a single pulse. It is the most efficient cooling mechanism in the universe, ensuring that the core can reach its final dense state by jettisoning its energy into the infinite void. Notice how your own energy seems to settle and quiet as you continue to rest, a gentle release of the day's heat and activity into the stillness around you. The star undergoes a similar, though far more violent, cooling, stripping itself of its energetic identity through this massive neutrino flood. What is left behind is a cold and quiet monument, while the star's true power wanders forever among the distant stars and across the empty gulfs. The brilliant visual display that captures our imagination is just a tiny, glowing afterthought compared to the overwhelming and invisible flood of neutrinos that defines the true event. We are conditioned to think of a supernova as a spectacular eruption of light. Yet this light is merely the smoke from a far more powerful and silent fire. The actual catastrophe is almost entirely hidden from view, occurring in a spectral dimension that our biological senses are simply not equipped to experience or understand. If we could see the universe through the eyes of a neutrino detector, the sky would be filled with massive, blinding pulses of energy that have no visible counterpart. The galaxy would appear not as a collection of stars, but as a web of flickering, ghostly signals that reveal the locations of every stellar death cry across time. Our visible world is a thin veneer of colour and light stretched over a much deeper and more energetic reality of phantom particles. This realization shifts our perspective on the nature of cosmic power, highlighting the importance of the invisible forces that shape our reality. The supernova is not just a light show, it is a profound and silent redistribution of mass and energy that occurs primarily in the dark. The light we see is a beautiful gift, but it is only the final fading echo of a much more significant and silent transformation. Neutrinos continue their silent and uninterrupted journey through the cosmos forever, travelling across the vast voids between galaxies without ever losing a single drop of their initial speed. Because they do not interact with the dust, gas, or radiation of deep space, they are perfectly preserved as they were at the moment of the star's death. They are the ultimate survivors of the supernova, destined to wander the infinite reaches of the universe until the very end of time itself. Millions of years from now, long after the original nebula has faded into invisibility and the central pulsar has slowed to a halt, these ghost particles will still be racing through the dark. They carry the memories of the red supergiant across billions of light years, acting as a permanent and unchanging record of a star that vanished eons ago. They are the most enduring legacy of the explosion, a physical presence that survives the total destruction of its source. The universe is filled with these ancient travelers, a silent and invisible population of messengers that have witnessed the entire history of galactic evolution. They pass through our solar system, through our sun, and through our very hearts, carrying the news of long-dead suns to the furthest horizons of reality. Their journey is a testament to the persistence of energy in a world that is otherwise defined by constant change and eventual decay. They weave an undetectable web of faint energy connecting the entire universe, linking the deaths of distant stars to the quiet lives of planets and the atoms of our own bodies. This invisible network acts as a grand and silent circulatory system for the cosmos, ensuring that the energy of a cataclysmic collapse is shared with the furthest reaches of space. Every supernova contributes its own flood of ghosts to this collective pool, creating a background hum of spectral activity that permeates every cubic centimetre of the void. This structure of connectivity reminds us that nothing in the universe ever truly happens in isolation, as the ghosts of one star's death are constantly passing through the hearts of a billion others. We are part of this silent conversation, touched by the messengers of distant tragedies every single second of our existence. The neutrinos form a bridge between the most violent events and the most peaceful moments, weaving a tapestry of energy that holds the galaxy together. Beyond the silent conversation of the ghost particles, the vast and glowing tapestry of a supernova remnant functions as a colossal, natural particle accelerator hanging in the deep silence of space. While human engineers build massive underground rings of magnets to study the building blocks of reality, the universe creates these machines on a scale of trillions of miles using nothing but the raw energy of a dying giant. The expanding shell of gas and tangled magnetic fields provides the perfect infrastructure for pushing matter to the absolute limits of physical speed. This structure is not merely a cloud of debris, but an active and powerful engine that continues to churn with energy long after the initial flash of the explosion has faded into the background. These cosmic machines operate with a quiet, persistent efficiency that dwarfs any terrestrial endeavour, utilising the entire volume of the shattered star to propel particles across the galaxy. The invisible magnetic tracks laid down by the explosion guide the movement of wandering atoms, turning the vacuum into a high-energy laboratory of unimaginable proportions. It is a beautiful and functional legacy, a way for the star to continue influencing the physical world through the manipulation of the smallest scales of existence. The remnant stands as a testament to the fact that even in its final state, a star remains a source of profound and dynamic power. This structure of magnetic fields and turbulent plasma acts as a celestial mirror for the smallest components of matter, particularly the simple protons that once formed the star's hydrogen fuel. Caught in the crushing grip of the magnetic shock waves, these protons are trapped in a relentless cycle of reflection, bouncing back and forth across the front of the expanding explosion. This is not a brief or fleeting encounter, but a marathon of motion that can last for several centuries as the remnant continues its slow and steady expansion into the dark. Each time a proton strikes the magnetic wall of the shockwave, it is kicked by the immense kinetic force of the debris, gaining a tiny bit more energy with every single bounce. Over the course of many lifetimes, these microscopic travellers are gradually whittled into high-energy projectiles by the constant, rhythmic pounding of the stellar wake. They are held in a state of perpetual acceleration, unable to escape the magnetic cage that keeps them pinned against the moving fire of the nebula. This process turns a simple, wandering atom into a vessel of extreme power, a tiny shard of the star that carries the momentum of 1,000 suns. The protons become the ultimate endurance runners of the cosmos, fueled by the dying breath of a giant that has long since vanished from view. If we were to look closer at these microscopic travellers, we would see them gaining staggering amounts of energy with every single interaction, until they finally achieve speeds that approach the absolute limit of light itself. At this critical threshold, the magnetic fields of the supernova remnant are no longer strong enough to hold the particles in their tight, bouncing orbits. They eventually shatter the invisible chains of the trap, breaking free from the nebula and shooting out into the wider galaxy as lone, high-speed wanderers of the interstellar void. This escape marks the transition from a trapped component of a stellar remnant to a free-roaming messenger of cosmic energy. The protons are launched with such incredible force that they can travel across the entire diameter of the galaxy without ever slowing down or being diverted from their straight and narrow paths. They carry the signature of the supernova's violence out into the quietest corners of the universe, spreading the star's kinetic legacy to places that never felt the heat of the initial blast. It is a grand and silent dispersal of power, a way for the star to reach out and touch the furthest reaches of reality. These escaped particles become the invisible threads that connect the site of a single death to the broader tapestry of the galactic neighbourhood. These high-speed atomic fragments, born from the death throes of a distant giant and accelerated by centuries of magnetic reflection, are known to us as cosmic rays. Despite their name, they are not rays of light or radiation in the traditional sense, but actual physical shards of matter, travelling at relativistic speeds through the dark. They form a constant, high-energy traffic that fills the void between suns, a silent population of atomic bullets that crisscross the galaxy in a never-ending and invisible storm. We are surrounded by this quiet traffic every moment of our lives, living in a universe that is perpetually populated by the energetic remnants of ancient catastrophes. Feel the gentle, steady weight of your resting limbs and the soft, rhythmic expansion of your chest as you breathe, a quiet contrast to the frenetic and unimaginable speed of these stellar shards. While you rest in the sanctuary of your world, these cosmic rays are zipping through the deep dark of space, carrying the history of 1 billion supernovae in every single atom. They are the most energetic physical objects in the universe, a permanent record of the power inherent in every stellar collapse. This traffic provides a background hum of activity that ensures the galaxy is never truly still or empty, even in its most remote and isolated regions. Surprisingly, the universe is continuously sending these high-velocity messengers to our doorstep, where they silently rain down upon our world from every direction of the night sky. Our planet's atmosphere acts as a soft and protective shield, catching these relativistic protons and breaking them apart into a harmless shower of secondary particles before they can reach the ground. It is a silent bombardment occurring every second of every day, a constant interaction between the terrestrial world and the deep, energetic wake of the distant stars. We are shielded by miles of air from this invisible stellar rain, allowing us to exist in a state of peaceful ignorance while the heavens pour down their energy. This interaction creates a faint invisible glow in the upper atmosphere, a chemical signature of the energy being absorbed and redirected by our protective gaseous veil. The cosmic rays are the only physical pieces of the distant universe that actually reach our world, providing a direct and tactile connection to the most violent events in the galaxy. They are the dust of distant explosions, delivered at the speed of light to the very edge of our home. This rain is a reminder that our world is not a closed system, but a small and protected harbour in a vast, energetic ocean. Deep within the genetic codes of all living things, this invisible drizzle of radiation may have played a quiet and fundamental role in the shaping of the evolution of life. Occasional strikes from cosmic ray descendants can reach the surface of our world, sometimes passing through the nuclei of living cells to trigger subtle mutations in the DNA. While we often think of radiation as a threat, these microscopic changes are the primary engine of biological diversity, providing the raw material for natural selection to weave the complex history of our species. A supernova explosion millions of years ago in a nearby arm of the galaxy might have provided the specific spark needed for a new biological branch to grow on Earth. This realization ties our very existence and the history of our development to the violent deaths of stars that occurred long before our ancestors ever looked up at the sky. We are the products of a cosmic environment that is constantly being nudged and shaped by the high-speed wreckage of the deep dark. The legacy of the supernova is written into the very instructions for our lives, a silent and ancient influence that has guided our journey from the primordial sea to the present day. We are the children of the stars, not just in our chemical makeup, but in the very mechanics of our survival and change. The historical records of these stellar events are etched into the most remote and silent places of our planet, specifically deep within the ancient ice of Antarctica. When these high-energy particles strike the nitrogen in our air, they create specific chemical compounds that eventually settle as a fine, invisible powder with the falling snow. Layer by layer, the polar ice preserves a chronological diary of the galaxy's most violent moments, creating a physical archive that spans tens of thousands of years. Scientists can drill into these frozen depths and extract cores that reveal the sudden spikes in chemical nitrates corresponding to nearby supernova from the distant past. Notice the cool stillness of the air you breathe and the total, unmoving silence of your surroundings, much like the frozen sanctuary of the southern poles where this history is kept safe. This ice is a library of cosmic fire, a place where the heat of an explosion is turned into the cold, chemical reality of a frozen record. It allows us to look back through time and see exactly how often our neighbourhood has been touched by the death of a giant. This frozen history provides a sense of continuity, a physical proof that the grand events of the universe leave a lasting and measurable mark on our own quiet world. The northern lights, those shimmering curtains of emerald and violet that dance across the polar skies, occasionally sway to the rhythmic echoes of stellar explosions from the deep past. While the sun is the primary driver of these beautiful light shows, a surge of cosmic rays from a nearby supernova remnant can enhance and alter the celestial display. These auroras become a visual symphony reflecting the energetic wake of a star that died long ago, turning the upper atmosphere into a glowing screen for the universe's most powerful events. It is a beautiful and visible connection between the terrestrial sky and the deep interstellar dark, allowing us to see the invisible energy of the stars with our own eyes. This interaction illuminates the magnetic field lines of our world, tracing the invisible architecture of our planet's protection as it interacts with the wreckage of the cosmos. The lights are a silent, glowing dance that celebrates the relationship between the Sun, the Earth, and the distant giants that seeded the galaxy with energy. They provide a sense of wonder and awe, a reminder that the beauty of our world is often fueled by the most extreme and violent forces in existence. Watching the lights is a way to witness the final, fading heartbeat of a supernova as it gently touches the edge of our home. This structure of wandering particles and tangled magnetic fields creates a quiet background hum of cosmic energy that fills the otherwise empty interstellar vacuum. Space is never truly silent or empty. It is a roiling sea of electromagnetic tension and high-speed atomic fragments that provide a baseline environment for everything that exists. This pervasive hum is the combined signature of every supernova that has ever occurred in the history of our galaxy, a collective memory of fire and light stored in the vacuum. It is a gentle, pervasive static that hums through the dark, a constant pressure that maintains the balance of the galactic medium. This background energy provides the necessary pressure to hold together the vast clouds of gas and dust that will eventually form the next generation of stars and planets. It is the invisible support system of the galaxy, a structural energy that prevents the vacuum from becoming a place of total and stagnant void. The hum is the music of the star's recycling process, a quiet and eternal song of transformation that echoes through the light years. We live within this energetic atmosphere, moving through a sea of ancient power that remains entirely undetected by our daily senses. Ultimately, if we were to look closer at our daily existence, we would find that the energy from a long-dead star still gently touches our world every single day, in ways we're only beginning to understand. We live in the wake of giants, constantly brushed by the high-speed remnants of their final, explosive moments as they drift through our neighbourhood. This contact is not violent or alarming, but a soft and persistent reminder of our place in a vast, interconnected system that spans the entire universe. The supernova is not a distant or isolated tragedy, but a generous neighbour whose gifts are delivered through the air we breathe and the ground we walk upon. Feel the deep and lasting peace of this realisation as you sink further into a state of total rest, knowing that the universe is intimately and safely connected to you. Every atom of your being and every moment of your history is part of a grand rhythmic cycle that uses the death of stars to power the life of worlds. The energy of the cosmic accelerators has finally reached its destination, settling into the quiet and stable reality of your own peaceful existence. You're the final home for the stars' wandering power, a place where the violence of the past is finally transformed into the tranquility of the present. This tranquility of the present moment arrives as the long eons of the cosmic calendar march forward, and the once spectacular supernova remnant begins to stretch so thin that it eventually becomes too translucent for even the most sensitive instruments to clearly see. The violent debris, which once roared across the sky as a blinding beacon, has now expanded across hundreds of light years, losing its cohesive form as it bleeds into the general background of the galaxy. This structure is no longer a localized event, but a vast, ghostly presence that has been diluted by the immense volume of the interstellar void. It lingers as a faint, disappearing whisper of light, a memory of a star that has distributed itself so thoroughly that its individual features have vanished into the dark. The glowing filaments that once traced the path of destruction now resemble a fine mist of atoms, wandering aimlessly through the deep silence. This process of dilution is the final act of the star's physical dispersal, a graceful fading of a warm ember into the cold, dark ash of the galactic medium. The star has become a part of everything, yet it is nowhere to be found as a single identifiable entity. As the boundaries of the nebula dissolve, the heavy elements settle into their final positions, waiting for the slow, patient currents of space to carry them to their next destination. It is a peaceful dissolution, a quiet exit from the stage of the visible universe. Surprisingly, the universe continues to absorb the heat of the explosion until the bright, energized gases eventually cool to match the absolute frigid temperature of deep space. The frantic thermal energy that once forged heavy elements and powered the expansion has finally dissipated, leaving the remnants at a temperature just a few degrees above absolute zero. This cooling marks the end of the star's active thermodynamic journey, a transition from a state of blistering intensity to a cold, dark equilibrium that mirrors the surrounding vacuum. The atoms no longer glow with the vibrant greens and reds of ionization, but settle into a quiet and invisible state of hibernation. They drift as cold, inert dust, waiting for the slow, patient pull of gravity to give them a new purpose in the distant future. This gradual loss of warmth is a slow transition from a violent, roaring fire to a state of absolute, frigid stillness. It is a necessary cooling, a way for the universe to reset the stage for the next great act of creation among the stars. The once superheated plasma has found its peace, becoming a silent and cold participant in the eternal dark of the galaxy. In this state of thermal rest, the elements are preserved in their most stable form, ready to be incorporated into the foundations of a new world. Once mighty shock waves which once tore through the star's atmosphere and ploughed into the interstellar medium with apocalyptic force, eventually decay into gentle and harmless ripples. These waves of pressure, having travelled across the vastness of the galactic arm, lose their destructive edge as they encounter the resisting density of local gas clouds. They become subtle undulations in the fabric of the galaxy, moving with the quiet grace of a fading echo rather than the violence of a thunderclap. This structure of energy, which was once capable of vaporizing entire worlds, now only serves to gently nudge the neighboring clouds of hydrogen and helium. They contribute to the rhythmic swaying of the interstellar sea, a final soft movement before the energy is completely absorbed into the background hum of the cosmos. The once jagged front of the explosion is smoothed out by time and distance, becoming a peaceful wave that carries the star's final message across the void. It is the slowing of a great heart, the final ripple of a pebble thrown into an infinite dark pond. These ripples are the last physical touch of the supernova, a gentle caress that marks the end of its influence on the surrounding landscape. They move on until they are indistinguishable from the natural vibrations of the galaxy itself. Notice the heavy, relaxing stillness of your own body as the day's frantic energy settles into a quiet, rhythmic breath. Deep in the heart of the wreckage, the central pulsar slowly loses its vast store of rotational energy, its once rapid, rhythmic heartbeat gradually fading away into the dark. The beams of radiation that once swept across the galaxy like a cosmic lighthouse begin to stutter and dim as the star's spin-down takes its toll over millions of years. The electromagnetic engine that powered the glowing nebula is running out of fuel, its ticks becoming slower and its flashes becoming more erratic. Eventually the signal will fall below the threshold of detection, becoming a silent, ticking ghost that no longer speaks to the wider universe. The rhythmic lullaby that once defined the remnant's core is reaching its final, quiet coda. This fading pulse is the last vestige of the star's individual identity, a dying beat that signals the final transition into the absolute silence of the infinite void. The pulsar becomes a dark relic, its music ending in a final, perfect silence that will never be broken. It drifts on in the dark, a cold and quiet heart that has finally found its rest. Only a cold, dark lump of neutrons remains in the aftermath, spinning silently in the absolute dark of a region, that was once home to a magnificent red supergiant. This object is no longer a star in the traditional sense, as it possesses no internal fires, no glowing atmosphere, and no visible presence to announce its existence. It is a dead, hyperdense sphere of matter, a relic of the collapse that has found a state of permanent and unyielding stability. While it still carries the mass of a sun, it occupies a volume no larger than a city, a tiny and invisible anchor in the vastness of the galaxy. If we were to look closer at the wider galaxy, we would find that the heavy elements forged in the explosion have safely dispersed to help form a brand new generation of stars. The iron, gold, and oxygen that once resided in the star's dying heart have travelled thousands of light years, finding their way into the dark nurseries where gravity is already beginning to assemble new suns. These elements act as the chemical seeds for future solar systems, providing the complexity needed for rocky planets and the foundations of life. The star's death has successfully enriched the galactic ecosystem, turning a singular tragedy into a widespread and generous gift of possibility. This dispersal ensures that the story of the original giant is woven into the very fabric of the new worlds that will eventually rise from its remains. The atoms that once glowed in the supergiant's atmosphere are now being pulled into the centres of new solar nebulae, starting the long climb toward fusion once again. It is a grand and beautiful act of cosmic recycling, where the ruins of the past are used to build the cathedrals of the future. The star's energy has been successfully transformed into the potential for new growth, a legacy that will span billions of years. This is the true success of the supernova, the successful delivery of its chemical cargo to the waiting universe. The galaxy has a way of forgetting individual events, incorporating their results into a larger, more complex whole that continues to evolve. The star's long life and spectacular end are now just a quiet part of the general history of the universe, a silent contribution to the overall progress of cosmic time. It is a total absorption, a merging of the individual into the eternal, where the name and form of the star are lost to the greater rhythm of the galaxy. This erasure is not a loss, but a completion of the cycle of return. The star has finally gone home, becoming one with the dark that birthed it. Viewed from the perspective of billions of years, the catastrophe was a small and manageable ripple in the eternal calm of the cosmos. It was a singular, beautiful breath in the long life of the galaxy, a pulse of energy that ensured the continuation of complexity. The violence has passed, leaving behind a world that is richer, more varied, and more stable than it was before. This transition is the heart of the cosmic story, a reminder that the loudest moments are often the servants of the longest silences. The peace that remains is deeper and more profound because of the fire that came before it. Notice how true stillness has finally returned to the quiet pocket of space where the giant star once lived and breathed its fire for millions of years. This absolute lightless silence is a deep and unyielding peace that has washed away the echoes of the implosion and the roar of the shockwaves. The dust has settled, the light has faded, and the energy has moved on to other places, leaving behind a void that is perfectly clear and undisturbed. The stars in the distance continue to shine with a steady, unchanging light, seemingly unaware of the drama that recently unfolded in this tiny corner of the dark. The universe patiently waits for the recycled dust to light up the dark once more in the form of a brand new, glowing star born from these ancient ashes. Somewhere in the deep, cold nurseries of the galaxy, the iron and oxygen from our giant are already being drawn together by the gentle, persistent pull of gravity. This process of assembly is slow and quiet, a million-year-long gathering of materials that will eventually result in the birth of a new sun and perhaps a family of orbiting worlds. The cycle is beginning again, fueled by the wreckage of the past and the enduring promise of the future. Allow the total, unmoving peace of your surroundings to wash over you as you recognize that the star's final contribution is this state of patient waiting. It is a quiet anticipation that ensures the light will always find a way to return to the void, no matter how long the darkness lasts. The story of the supernova is a story of hope, a cycle that transforms the end into a new beginning through the simple, eternal movement of dust and gravity. The universe is not a graveyard of dead stars, but a fertile field where every death is a seed. We are part of this waiting, a quiet moment of clarity in the middle of a never-ending journey toward the light. The supernova is our history, our architecture, and our future, a magnificent and rhythmic process that ensures the universe never runs out of the potential for wonder. It is the ultimate synthesis of physics and philosophy, showing that the most extreme death is the absolute prerequisite for the most complex life. As we look back at the dark, we do not see a void, but a beautiful and glowing tapestry of recycled light that continues to weave the story of the stars. We are the living breath of a dying sun, a temporary arrangement of stardust that has found the brief and beautiful clarity to recognize our own reflection in the cosmic fire. The journey is complete, and the light is ready to begin again. As this grand story settles into the background of your mind, allow your focus to drift down to the very tips of your toes. Notice the weight of your feet as they rest against the soft fabric of your sheets, completely supported and entirely still. This quiet room is a sanctuary where the heavy elements of the universe have finally found a place of permanent peace. Surprisingly, the body has a natural wisdom in letting go, and you can feel a wave of relaxation beginning to wash over your ankles. Every muscle is softening now, releasing tension as easily as a cooling nebula spreads into the dark. The journey of the stars is complete, and your physical form is ready to sink into the stillness. If we were to look closer, we would see your hips and back gently melting into the mattress. This structure of your body, built from ancient and resilient materials, is now entering a state of absolute, effortless equilibrium. Every breath you take is a slow, rhythmic lullaby that carries you closer to the threshold of sleep. Your abdomen and chest rise and fall with a steady, peaceful certainty that requires no effort at all. Feel the warmth in your fingertips as it travels up your arms, relaxing your shoulders in one continuous motion. The heavy, quiet energy of the world is settling here, wrapping you in a blanket of total security. The muscles in your neck and jaw are finally releasing their final, subtle hold on the waking day. This quiet room is filled with a soft velvet silence that invites your mind to drift into a state of pure, thoughtless presence. Your tongue rests heavily in your mouth, and the tiny muscles around your eyes are growing soft and smooth. A gentle, cooling sensation flows across your forehead and over the crown of your head, signaling a total surrender to the night. Everything is still, everything is dark, and everything is exactly as it should be in this small corner of the house. The weight of your head against the pillow is a perfect anchor, pulling you down into the deep, welcoming shadows of rest. Within this sanctuary, the air is cool and the blankets are warm, creating a perfect balance of comfort and safety. Your breath is a slow, invisible thread that weaves through the silence of the room, connecting you to the peaceful rhythm of the night. Every part of you is now heavy, warm, and entirely ready to vanish into the soft embrace of the mattress. Let the sounds of the room fade into a distant, meaningless hum as you sink deeper and deeper into the quiet. The thoughts of the day are dissolving like mist, leaving behind only the pure, uncomplicated sensation of being at rest. You're safe here, protected by the four walls and the heavy, comforting blanket of the dark. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.